Trump administration will establish a clear principle that will govern all decisions pertaining to immigration. The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting.
This is going to be an awful lot of information, and will this mean that people will have delays in getting their visas to come to the United States? Will this mean fewer people will want to come? What is the State Department doing with this data?
Well, let's bring in our panel to talk about it. Tom Rogan, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Ann Gearan, political correspondent at the Washington Post. And Eli Lake, columnist for Bloomberg View. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you on our Lightning Round Friday. Tom, I'll start with you. What do you make of these announced changes? Well,
I think that the exigent point here is that the Trump administration is trying to address an issue that the Obama administration had grappled with. And that is the environment of ISIS returners with people who hold perhaps EU passports who might be able to come to the United States on a visa waiver program, and that potentially they could sort of navigate their way through the process. The real issue, though, I think here is that this is kind of political trying to tick a box. It's trying to say if that ever happened, if a British citizen who was part of ISIS then carried out an attack in Kansas City one day, well, we tried to develop some more safeguards. Ultimately, though, someone who is a terrorist is probably not going to put down on the form that they were a terrorist. So I don't know how much efficacy in a counterterrorism terms it will actually have.
Yeah, okay, so folks know these are some of the bullet points about what they're going to be looking for. Applicants will have to turn over social media history from 5 years prior to applying. They say not passwords and that kind of thing, but handles and, accounts. Email addresses and telephone numbers 5 years back, international travel 5 years back, any prior immigration violations, and any family connections to terrorism. And Tom sort of hit on this. Do we think they're going to disclose any terror connections through the family?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't actually that extreme as vetting goes. It doesn't apply to people who are not applying for visas, for example. And no, I mean, if you have something to hide, there are ways to hide it. I think there are some real civil liberties concerns with this, but it is not really that much of it's not substantively different than questions that are already asked. What makes it different is that it goes into the realm of social media. But visa applicants are already asked for a lot of information about their associations with other people, and that will be the legal argument that the administration uses in an inevitable challenge that this really isn't that different.
Yeah, and Eli, the estimates are that millions of people will actually be impacted by this, all those applying for visas, not just to come here. I mean, it's a higher standard of what you're asking for to come, but do you think it'll work?
Well, we have to separate two things. One is a counterterrorism question where the big concern now are people who are already here being radicalized online. The other, though, is a more interesting question, which is, in the Cold War, if you wanted to come to the United States and apply to become a citizen, you couldn't be a declared communist. Are we now getting to a point where you can't really be, for lack of a better word, radical Islamist if you come to the United States? And that is a separate question from whether or not you might actually be a terrorist. And that is one where you have to sort of see how this policy plays out. And I think that, in my view, Americans should be able to hold any opinion and participate in the public square. But constitutional rights of American citizens do not necessarily apply to people who are applying to come here. So that is, I think, really where the rubber will meet the road on that.
Well, I'm waiting for the first lawsuit. If it's not already been filed, when these things become official, that will happen. Yeah, we can watch for that. Okay, let's talk about topic 2 now, which is Hillary Clinton out talking again about criticism of her and how she's handled this post-election period. Here's what she's saying.
People said that to me, mostly people in the press, for whatever reason, like, oh, go away, go away. And I had one of the young people who works for me go back and do a bit of research. They never said that to any man who was not elected.
She's wrong comparing herself to those male candidates, Republican and Democratic, who lost presidential elections as well. They were much more gracious about it.
Well, and we all talk to people who are actively within the Democratic Party and Democratic leadership who say, no, they actually do want her to stop talking about the election.
It's absolutely a fair question for Democrats to ask whether she's helping or hurting. But the larger question here of, like, should she be saying these things and is a different standard being applied to her, I think is also something that we all need to look at in the political sphere. And frankly, the Democrats will need to look at as well, because at the same time as there are definitely Democrats who wish that she would leave the stage at least a little bit, there are also a lot of other Democrats who think she's being treated unfairly, and not only by Republicans, not only by the White House. I think she's being treated unfairly by other Democrats, and that she does have a voice and she has something to say. She should be able to say it. Tom?
I think the first point is here, can we remember, objectively, can we remember a failed presidential candidate who has been, in basic terms, as bad a loser as she has been? In many different ways, whether it be in India, the more recent comments. And secondly, if we look at, for example, recent presidential candidates in terms of their deportment after losing an election, there has been this sort of impulse to actually sort of, Mitt Romney, for example, in 2012, in terms of the President Obama's reaction on Russia, the comments there. He didn't really press that so aggressively afterwards. So I think, to some degree, this is part of her own making. And actually, again, it comes to that point, the party wants to move forwards.
Okay, now, briskly, we're going to get through because we want all of your winners and losers for the week. Eli, we'll start with you.
Winner, Roseanne Barr. After 21 years, she comes back, and it's a big hit. Despite the fact that her character, just like the comedian, is a big Trump voter. And the loser is Donald Trump's Iran strategy, which I think was actually doing a lot better than people thought. With his comments, if this is true, that there's going to be a premature exit from Syria, then that's basically leaving in a very important country in the Middle East to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Not a good call.
Yeah, a lot of devolving situation there.
Obama's policy.
Okay, so my winner is Vladimir Putin. And even though, yes, the largest expulsion of Russian diplomats ever happened this week, he is still essentially being able to bull his way through and all the international outrage, U.S. and other, at the poisoning of a man and his daughter on British soil. And when given the opportunity to directly confront him over that, the President of the United States didn't do so. My loser is David Shulkin. Not only did he get fired in what is probably the least surprising development of the week, but his explanation for it, for why, said he was politically targeted, really fell flat, and it means that his successor, who already had a hard job, has an even harder one. Quick.
Very quickly, Jim Mattis is the winner. I think partisan hyperventilation, chill out too. We need to chill out more. And the second on the loser, Jeremy Corbyn, British Labour Party leader, anti-Semitism was proved on his part, and Theresa May is now up in the polls.
Right. Nicely done, you all.